Aloha. Welcome back for part two with the Nrf2 activist here. Broadcasting live from Maui. Okay. Initially, Dr. McCord was only hoping Nrf2 activation would increase 2 or 3 super antioxidant enzymes, SOD, catalase, and maybe glutathione. He and other doctors on his team said that would have a small but important impact. Like James Crapo at the National Jewish Medical Center, who's also located in Denver, a big name within the Jewish community, that, if we could just activate 2 or 3 of these super antioxidant enzymes, that would have a small but an important impact. There are many different kinds of doctors and even different kinds of medical doctors. And there's a big difference between the kind who see patients and practice medicine versus the kind that work in medical labs. Dr. McCord is a hardcore medical research scientist and has been working in science labs for over 50 years. The kind of clinical studies he's constantly involved with are the gold standard of medicine, called peer-reviewed, which involves a review committee of anonymous members who are each experts in the field of study that's being conducted. And peer reviews typically take 5 to 10 years to complete, and 90 to 95% of them fail during that period to hit the bar, meaning only 1 of 10 or 20 meet the high standards set to be accepted and published. It takes at least 2 independent universities who are both funded, prepared, and then they have to follow the same exact steps, independently submitting their results. If anything doesn't match or add up, the review committee can make them go back and do more research. They can ask any kind of questions they want, and they can even bring in another 3rd independent university to triple check everything step by step and see if they get the same exact results. In fact, as a 3rd independent university, Harvard was brought into the first peer-reviewed clinical study that I showed you in part 1 with Dr. McCord's first-generation Nrf2 activator, because the results they were seeing were so revolutionary. We're talking about oxidative stress reduction, which had never been done before. Everything else ever published had always increased it, and finally it was miraculously being taken back to that of a healthy newborn, even within an 80-year-old. The review committee ended up getting a serious education on the most revolutionary medical science ever discovered, and with the #1 published area of medical science. And although they're all anonymous while the study is being conducted, they can make themselves known after the study is approved and published. And one of them just happened to be the past president of the American Heart Association, just to help you see the caliber of the kind of people who are on this type of review committee. And because of his recommendation, Virginia Commonwealth University, VCU, began a peer-reviewed heart study. And with the shockwaves heard around the world within the medical community from the first 2005 landmark study, from the first one we showed you in part 1, VCU wasn't alone. Many other top universities around the world started other peer-reviewed clinical studies on Dr. McCord's Nrf2 activator. And even though these peer reviews typically take about 5 to 10 years to complete, several of those are now completed for us. But in the beginning, there was only one, which became even more famous the year before it was even completed, because ABC heard about what was being done the previous year before the results had been published publicly. And if some of you have seen that ABC primetime investigation, that's awesome. For those of you who haven't, I highly recommend that you go check it out. I know that there's a version available that's uncut. It's available at highspeedrelief.com, as well as a bunch of other original, Dr. McCord presentations on his first generation Nrf2 activator. But ABC, I highly recommend you watch it. They spent millions of dollars of their own time and money to produce a primetime investigation, and lots of companies would pay to have that kind of press coverage. But ABC didn't ask for 1 penny from the company to either validate it or try to expose it as another fraud or myth. Let's face it, mainstream media makes way more money on controversy. When they heard the last Elliott Cresson gold medal recipient was saying he'd solved the problem that everything else had only made worse, in the area of medical science, with more money dumped into it than anything else, they jumped at the opportunity, spent millions of dollars, their own time and money, not really knowing what the results would be until the results of their own reporter came in. And the reporter, John Quinones, basically showed up at Dr. McCord's office and said, basically, I heard you can do it in 2 weeks, what your study shows for 4 weeks for T-bars. And you've got 2 weeks to show what it does with me. And that's what we're going to show the world. So he didn't cut Dr. McCord any slack. He knew he was dealing with Dr. McCord's reputation being on the line, the father of free radical biology, and the man who basically invented it, and his reputation of having received the Elliott Cresson gold medal, and having been nominated for Nobel Prizes. And with a before and after blood test measuring T-bars of John Quinones, Dr. McCord's Nrf2 activator produced within 2 weeks with John Quinones what the study showed happens in 4 weeks. So total third-party validation again and again with ABC, just like Harvard. That ABC primetime produced the most positive press ever given to a nutritional supplement in history still today. And other reports are available today, but this is where it all started. From that 2005 landmark study, they actually learned Dr. McCord's Nrf2 activator was at least 10 times more powerful than what he had hoped for, because they found out that all 30, not just 2 or 3, but all 30, 100% of all known super antioxidant enzymes that have ever been discovered, all 30 are regulated by Nrf2. Neither ABC nor the study make any mention of that, but from that study, that was just another piece of the bigger picture of what was just being discovered. The ABC primetime created an instant surge of public interest and product orders, which the company was not prepared at all to fulfill. So they missed out on a lot of the surge, and that all stopped about as fast as it started. Over the next 5 years, the same product sat on the shelves of GNC, CVS, and other retail stores and went nowhere. At the same time, the company was losing millions of dollars per year because the vast majority of people had no idea what the difference was between their bottle and what it could do compared to any other bottle sitting on the same shelves, because the bottles weren't saying anything. The bottles couldn't tell the story that needed to be told, such as what I'm telling you here. That's what was actually happening, and that's where they were when David Brown recognized the solution and convinced them to hire him as their CEO and take charge in getting the word out by taking their publicly traded company into a direct sales network marketing model, which was another first ever in history because that had never been done before. But right away, it started growing and showing a profit for the very first time. It still went through some of the same S-curve involved with timing and growth of every company getting started. But with David Brown as CEO, with Dr. McCord's reputation and revolutionary product, they soon recruited some top leaders in the industry who began running with it like their hair was on fire. And I was actually introduced to this right about that time. Initially, I was introduced to Tricia and Eric Albertson, Tricia over the phone, and the next day, Eric traveled from out of state to be the first person to actually show up on my doorstep and teach me in person. And he took me to meet the CEO, David Brown, that same day. And eventually, with thousands of other amazing people, including Paige Gimbel, and we helped that company break all records for how fast a company can hit 200 million per year. That's right, and that's before we knew what we know now. So I'm going to screen share. During this period, which was the last quarter of 2009, the fourth peer-reviewed clinical study was published in Circulation. the American Heart Association's journal, which is the #1 authority on heart studies. I like to always ask, according to who? And I like to be able to point to the #1 authority in whatever area we're talking about here. We can't guarantee you'll never have heart failure. Heart failure is the #1 cause of death, killing 1 out of 2, 50% of men and women, and most women don't even know they're part of that statistic. It's called the silent killer because most of the time, there's no warning signs, no tap on the shoulder, no knock on the door, and most people don't live past the first incident. And we can't guarantee even the best nutritional supplements will prevent anyone from having heart failure. Now, I also tell you the same disclaimer that I gave on part 1 applies to part 2. I've already given that. I'm just reinforcing it here. Now, the American Heart Association, through their medical journal, Circulation, they can teach you all you need to know about what it does with heart failure. And somehow, with as much as they say here and as powerful as it is, somehow they can get away with it. Dr. McCord and several others have worked hard and have done what they can to bring to light the most powerful study the American Heart Association has ever published in history, November 2nd, 2009. It's been over 10 years since then, and a lot of people have died of heart failure, a lot more than COVID-19. The American Heart Association has not done much of anything other than allowing it to be published because it passed the peer-reviewed test, which is the gold standard of medical science. They had to publish it. It passed the test better than anything they'd ever seen. Let me ask you a question. Was a study published that prevented 100% of heart failure, where 100% failed without it, by artificially creating high blood pressure to the point where 100% of them failed that didn't have Nrf2 activation, and 0 failed with the Nrf2 activation? So I will repeat that question because this is a very important question. Was a study published that prevented 100% of heart failure when 100% failed without it by artificially creating high blood pressure until all the right ventricles blew out without Nrf2 activation with the initial control group? It didn't have that. And here's where you can find the answer. And if so, does it mean we should be able to say so, even if the FDA doesn't want us to say what the results were without actually having it in our hand or showing you the actual study, letting you read it for yourselves as I scrolled through the whole thing for you? Well, the American Heart Association did publish it, and they got away with telling us the truth. But that study is now already buried under over almost 11 years of other studies. November 2nd will be 11 years. The whole while, they could have drawn more attention to it, yet they remain quite silent on the matter still. Since November 2nd, 2009. Plus, most people don't want to read something like this. It's complicated, even for me, to literally decipher the coded language of peer reviews. So Dr. McCord gave a presentation detailing the take-home messages from this study after it was published. And tickets sold for about $100 a piece. Since most of you would rather listen to someone explain it in simple lay terms, I'm doing my best for you here. And if you'd like to have access to the archive of Dr. McCord presentations on his first-generation formula explaining several of the initial peer reviews, such as this heart study, check out highspeedrelief.com. It would take you about 24 hours of watching each of them a few times, and I'm doing my very best just to sum it up for you here. The American Heart Association has usually allowed the public to search their archive of every study ever published in their official journal Circulation. From several searches during that time from their website when searching keywords, nutritional supplement, I found paper after paper was teaching medical doctors how to deal with people who are bringing information to them about a nutritional supplement, and it was overwhelmingly negative. Except for this study, November 2nd, 2009. It's the only one that I could see. And it's the most powerful one I've ever seen from them. And, I'm showing you another thing that I found was I didn't not only find anything positive except for this, is that soon after, during this period, they used to let us search every single article that had ever been published by them from their website, which you can see is circ.ahajournals.org, right? So that used to be, and then soon after this particular paper was published, their search option disappeared completely for me. We used to be able to send people there that they could go verify getting it right from this website. And now, when it finally did show up for us again, which is really recently for me, I hadn't looked for years because it had disappeared for so long. Now it's just the first 11 of the first 26 pages that I showed you here, just the main study, the first 11. That's where that ends on page 11. And it doesn't include the data supplement after that, even though if you go to their website, if you copy this here, I'll just copy that. And then I can take you to a new share. And let's find out what happens when we go to that link. Even from their website, page not found, 404 error, we're sorry, may have been removed or changed or is temporarily unavailable. So only the first 11 out of the 26 pages that I showed you here, just the main study, because their own link to the data supplement, which is the rest of it, still a broken link, has been broken since the study, soon after the study was published. The whole thing was, we were having a hard time finding it from them. So the public, even though the first 11 pages are there, the public still has no longer had easy access to search every study they've ever published. As a public speaker, I've been complaining about the absence of the study and the absence in the search of every study they've ever published. I've been complaining about the absence and neglect of this for the past 10 years. And maybe that's why we can finally see the main paper again. And I'm going to continue to speak up as long as it takes to help bring this to light, bring it to the masses who need to hear it. They're heavily funded by the pharmaceutical industry, as are all medical schools. Can you say conflict of interest? Not everyone has the courage to say that. Apparently, they have no conflict of interest to their investors, just a huge conflict of interest to the public, 50% of which are dying of heart failure. Some things don't hit home until they hit home. The same day this article was published, I heard there was a meeting of top leaders. They were gathering for a live public meeting where the results of this heart study would be discussed. At the same time, my mother's youngest sister, who's my aunt, who's about 10 years my senior, she just started complaining of high blood pressure. So I knew she was at high risk, and I insisted she hop in my car and go with me to hear what all the excitement was about. And seeing these results again, and then instead of making the decision to get Nrf2 activated, she decided to set up an appointment with her medical doctor, which wasn't possible for another month because the initial appointment was set for a month out. It's amazing how many doctors like to schedule appointments a month at a time. And she died of a heart attack in the middle of the night, right before that first appointment ever came. She'd been a single mother, and her oldest son, who had just got married, ended up having his younger siblings who hadn't graduated high school yet. He ended up having them live with him and his new wife. I tell this story again because sometimes it doesn't hit home until it hits home. During this time, several other studies were being conducted. And through the several other studies which were happening, another breakthrough occurred, which unveiled the fact that Nrf2 activation was actually 100 times more powerful than Dr. McCord had initially hoped for. Because instead of only 2 or 3 genes, we discovered about 300 genes that were being influenced by it. And by this time, Nrf2 activation was catching the attention of the biggest drug companies, Pfizer and Merck, because they don't really want to get left in the dust. Merck had to abandon their project because after spending millions of dollars in their own research, they proved their drug was killing people way too fast. And Pfizer's research proved their drug for Nrf2 activation wasn't killing people too fast to prevent them from unleashing their drug onto the masses. They also used Dr. McCord's initial formula to compare their results within their own published study, and they proved their drug was less than half as effective at activating Nrf2 than Dr. McCord's first generation formula. And their drug still has a long list of negative effects, as all drugs do, because of the way they work chemically. And to top it off, they charge 10 times more for a month's supply. When's the last time you heard of a drug company comparing any drug to a nutritional supplement? I'd never heard of it before. And they chose to do that in this case because of the power of the science and to be able to compare it to the #1 proven formula at that time. How's that for the how can we do this without you attitude and mindset? With all the people who are suffering, 1 out of 2 deaths from heart failure, which is also happening within the families of doctors too. And the American Heart Association knows how vital this is. If they had integrity, they would do more to share and take home. They do much more to share the take-home messages of what's been proven with Dr. McCord's Nrf2 activation formulas. So, the fact that several drug companies are now striving to develop a drug that is a Nrf2 activator also further validates Nrf2 activation in general. When our cells are tuned properly, they're so extremely efficient. We never understood how efficient, and I still don't know anyone else who speaks the way I do about how efficient they really are. But their genes must be tuned to give them that efficiency. The white blood cells and lymphocytes are the body's armed forces, our army and special forces. These major immune cells accelerate their life process when they discover any harmful substance like cancer, and they shoot out the byproduct of superoxide like a laser gun at cancer cells, which dissolves the cancer cells within seconds into pieces so small you can't even see them under a microscope anymore. It's like magic. Now you see it, now you don't. When the white blood cells and lymphocytes find any bad guys, they shoot out superoxide like a laser gun, which dissolves the harmful cancer and other bad guys in seconds like magic. And when their other gun, after that, they have this other gun that is supposed to shoot out the SOD to reintegrate the superoxide right back to oxygen so that it doesn't damage the healthy tissue in the surrounding areas. And if that other gun is broken, then they do. The healthy tissue does continue to get damaged, which is the mechanism for all autoimmune issues. Thank you, Dr. McCord, for teaching us about that at the 2009 Sea Change event. We had video footage of that for years without understanding near as much science behind it. The fact that so many people have recovered from COVID-19 without any vaccine is further proof that we produce our own antibodies on demand, just as good today as we have for thousands of years. If the life processes are functioning right, our own immune cells are so powerful, they can even scan the insides of every cell. They can identify and eliminate any foreign invaders. Our body produces its own antibodies on demand, so we don't even need vaccines to build up any antibodies. But our cells need to be in the healthy terrain, the healthy environment where the friendly microbes thrive, where the friendly flora assist with the communication of identifying friend from foe, because the immune cells can't even perform this function without their presence. And they need their genes tuned properly also, but we're on the side of the equation dealing with the microbes is a really important add-on to this presentation. We're supposed to have as many friendly flora in our colon as the total number of cells in the human body. And the whole colon is lined with lymph nodes. The further down you get, the higher the concentration of lymph nodes. So that's where most of them are in the body. They act as the garrisons for the white blood cells and lymphocytes, which are made up of white blood cells. The more these immune cells malfunction, the more degenerated the colon gets, the more plugged up in some ways and leaky gut in others, the less we even properly assimilate the food we eat. And how much money do we spend each month on food alone? One thing I noticed when I got Nrf2 activated on McCord's technology is that I was saving money on the cost of food alone that I was no longer eating, to the point that it was more than paying for itself just by being on it in the cost of food alone. And in this economy, who would just like to save some money? And so I know it was doing some amazing things to increase the efficiency and functionality of my gut. And I didn't know what a problem I had with low blood sugar was until, when I would forget to eat. I didn't know how big of a problem was with low blood sugar when I would forget to eat until after I got on Nrf2, until after I got Nrf2 activated. I could turn into a bear sometimes prior to that, and I've been a whole new person in that regard. I haven't had a problem with blood sugar levels ever since the past 10 years plus since I got Nrf2 activated. Nrf2 is proven to help stabilize blood sugar more powerfully than anything I've ever seen. How many things are associated with blood sugar issues? That's a huge market right there. We know a lot of the mechanisms, how it's associated with high blood pressure too. I had one of my people call in on with questions about that just today. And but anyway, people live longer and suffer harder with diabetes than they do with heart failure. Usually they're dead the first incident, don't really suffer much at all. But with diabetes, boy, they go on and on and on. So much inflammation building up. Finally, the gravity pulls it down in the leg. They cut the legs off. Maybe the same doctor that just prescribed the insulin. It's a big, sad story. 258 studies were published on Nrf2 activation in diabetes last year altogether, just with last year, on Nrf2 and diabetes. And with 7 published in 7 days, another 258 were published this year by 10/10/2020. So I have something to show you. One second here. Going to do an important screen share. How many this year? Let's do the screen share on this right now. Where we are today, October 22nd, we actually have 268. So 10 more, 10 days later. Wow. So you can see it's a big interest, Nrf2, and what it is usually as people get educated within the medical community, they want to know what's really going to solve those problems. And so this is a big deal to see that many being done and published. It is an extremely big deal that you have access to all that data from PubMed.gov. That's the government website, National Library of Medicine website. If you do let's try this another way. Let's just see what happens on just Nrf2. There's 16,847 now We have had 2,738 studies so far this year. We had 2,800 last year. We'll surpass that still. We got a couple more months or more to go now. No problem. It's amazing. You see things like cancer. If you do a study on Nrf2 with the name of any disease, there's tons of stuff that just shows up, especially with the #1 killers. Okay. So I want to show you something else real quick too. Let's go to another screen share. Dun, 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 dun. Okay, so we're back here. This is really important. This diagram is from Dr. Joe McCord himself, and it's very revealing. See, after 10 years from when the first generation formula was produced, 10 times more studies had been published, and we learned 10 times more than what we knew before. At first, all we knew was one mechanism to activate Nrf2, and that was how to release it from another protein that was holding it outside the nucleus. And it's not supposed to be holding it outside the nucleus. That's one of the malfunctions. If it can't get in the nucleus, it can't regulate the genes, because that's the vault that holds the genes within it. Now we know what the actual shutoff mechanism is, and we've learned how to prevent that from happening. And plus another mechanism, third one, if all we do is release Nrf2 so it can diffuse into the nucleus, which is what the first formula was good at, then it can also diffuse right back out of the nucleus, which is still happening to some degree with the first generation formula. It does nothing for the actual shutoff mechanism, wasn't intended for that. And as far as not directly, and it doesn't target the other mechanism for keeping it in the nucleus longer. It's amazing the results we've been showing you so far with part 1 and 2 were produced with that first generation product. Absolutely amazing. And there's a, the third mechanism allows us to shut the door once Nrf2 gets in the nucleus, that keeps Nrf2 in the nucleus where the genes actually are much longer. So Nrf2 has much more time to tune those genes, which is the whole purpose of Nrf2 activation. It's no wonder that Dr. McCord's second generation formulas are much, much more effective at activating Nrf2. As powerful as the first generation formula is proven to be, and you can see the name of it identified in the section on the right here on the bottom, protandem, as powerful as proven to be, it was only designed to target one of the known mechanisms, to get it released from the protein that isn't supposed to be holding it and keeping it outside the nucleus. So that's the bottom on this chart is identified there on this bottom, in this right section at the bottom. It says protandem, and I never expected to see it on the bottom of a graph like this. But just look at the difference between that and the green bar, at the top, identified as genomics and PB123. Some people have a misconception about that. Some have thought genomics is PB125. You can see PB125 is about 75% the effectiveness. I'm just looking by eyeballing it as the genomics is at Nrf2 activation. And this is also in perfect harmony with all the science that was submitted on these second generation products above the bottom one, all the science that was submitted on those products to submitted to the patent office also supports this graph that we're showing you. All the science that Dr. McCord submitted to the patent office is basically, this is a really good, clear summary, what we're seeing in this graph. And this is directly from Dr. McCord also. And it's several studies have been published on PB125 too, which is, again, second most powerful as seen here. Nrf2 activation is the most powerful thing I've ever seen as far as what we can eat or drink to restore functionality in the body. All the lines in this chart are Dr. McCord formulas, right? And first, there was just one available, one Nrf2 synergizer. And if you look at the difference between that bottom line versus the one at the top, which one is your top pick? Genomics really stands out above and beyond the rest as Dr. McCord's #1 most efficient Nrf2 activator. I also think there are benefits. I want to say this right now because I think Dr. McCord will also appreciate this. And many people will, those who are involved in any of these will appreciate that. I believe that there are benefits of having access to more than one formula. And this is something that not everyone is willing to admit. It takes a bit more integrity, I think, especially when we don't have access to market all the formulas. And that's uncommon to admit something like this when we don't have access to market all of those. And yet, I think there are benefits of having access to more than one formula because all the different ingredients are also known for other health benefits. And it's in common, yet some people are allergic to ashwagandha, which is in Protandim and PB125. And it's also considered a medicine. And it's illegal to bring it in as just with a regular nutritional supplement into some countries because of both the fact that some people are allergic to it and also because they categorize it as a medicine that needs a license to approve type of a thing. But, you know, when it comes down to the main aspect of what we're talking about here is Nrf2 activation and what Nrf2 does, definitely this chart really helped me know which one I was supposed to be on. Personally, I'd never been a pill popper in my life, and I was proud of that fact. I'd never taken anything longer than 3 months, and even that was very rare. I like to eat healthy, think healthy, and have a healthy lifestyle choices. And I learned that I couldn't get Nrf2 activated the way Dr. McCord's formulas do with just positive thinking. On the topic of creating healing energy frequencies and signatures, I'm one of the best in the world that teaches people how to create some of the same homeopathic type healing energy, even from supplements, because the energy frequencies some herbs have are responsible for some of the results. And sometimes I can get the same results, same types of results, if they can be activated with that kind of energy. So I performed an experiment. I stopped taking Dr. McCord's formula, and even though I was very persistent during the experiment, within 2 to 4 weeks, I felt myself go back to where I was before I even started to get Nrf2 activated. Although some things that we know some things can be done with energy, some things still must be done physically to get the physical result. And shortly after my experiment, through a conversation I had with Dr. McCord personally, he confirmed the mechanisms for activating Nrf2 had to be done physically to get the physical result. And a total paradigm change for me. I'm proud to be a pill popper, but not just any pill. After 10 years on Protandim, my body was actually ready for something new. We don't know what all the benefits are of having more than one option, yet we do have what I'm showing you here. And it's amazing that you can be part of a company that's licensed with this technology that Dr. McCord was literally nominated for Nobel Prizes for and was awarded the Elliott Crescent Medal, which is given to people who radically change the world for the better forever. And with that, that is a foundation. I've just got a couple more points to make, and that'll wrap us up with part 2. And I have several other slides that I'll be sharing and going into the bigger, a much deeper dive into what the real bigger picture is that I'd like to share with you. About ready to hit warp speed with part 3 really quick. When it comes to Nrf2 activation, I just want to say it's a very complex thing. And we can trust the top medical research scientist, the #1 name in the game, Dr. Joe McCord. He produced the safest and most effective first-generation formula. And now he and his team have produced the safest, most effective second-generation Nrf2 activation formulas. And a downside of having so many fish in such a big pond, a lot of marketing companies have been willing to slap labels on just about anything to get it into the market. So many of them are just copying some of the prime ingredients of products in a niche market and slapping labels on it, pushing it into the market, which has created a lot of Me Too products that don't deserve credit because they haven't made any real contribution. And they're showering people with average, showering people with average Me Too products has actually been part of another growing problem. I should say other growing problems, plural. I have another screen share that I'm going to do for you here really quick. Just got it prepared. Here we go. You'll see this particular one is one of the videos that's available at High Speed Relief. And what you're seeing here, this is showing the different ingredients of the first generation formula and what they were doing with Nrf2 activation. That, turmeric and green tea, curcumin and green tea were actually shutting it off a little bit by themselves. And some of them weren't doing much of anything. And yet the whole formula had this big, huge synergistic effect because of the way that they work together, 18 times more effectively than the sum of the parts, right? 18-fold increase of then that's pretty amazing. And some people think, wow, I can just take one of the prime ingredients or two of them, make my own formula and say that it does some activating. And a lot of people might look at the ingredients of a bottle, hearing a story about it, and think, wow, well, if that has green tea or turmeric, I don't need that bottle because I've already got plenty of turmeric in this other product or green tea. I take that all the time. So I definitely don't need that. And it really is not the case. It's not what they think. It doesn't work that way. As this chart shows, by themselves, some of these ingredients just shut it off, and they're not very effective, but they all work in the way that formulas work. They are working together to help. So watch out for those who promote the Me Too products without the technical science that it takes to get Nrf2 activated effectively. Okay. Another thing that I want to share while I'm here. Well, shoot. I'm going to just go ahead and I just stopped share, so that's fine. I'm just going to go ahead and wrap up part 2, call it a wrap. And if you have any questions about how to get genomics, contact the person who referred you to this video. Don't just think that you can go find it easy. The company doesn't make it very easy for people to do that at all. And there may be some hoops for some of you to jump through to gain access to it even. But I'm someone that I would really rather you follow up with a person who referred you to this video. And if they are not sure, let's at least give them the 24-hour notice. You can contact me and I can help you do that. Give them a 24-hour notice, give them some credit for sharing this with you. I want to thank you, and I'm going to go ahead and do part 3 as soon as I can get it queued up. I'll be coming back on live for that. And that's a wrap.